He was supposed to be untouchable, a kingpin who moved through the citier Eurostrade's shadowed underbelly like a phantom, feared by all, touched by none. But now he was gone. The frantic voice of his right-hand man crackled through my phone, each word a hammer blow against my skull. His car abandoned on a desolate back road. No blood, no struggle, just an empty space where Roman should have been. In that single heart-stopping moment, the world tilted on its axis. The man I had worshipped, the man I had defied, the man I had risked everything to possess just one night ago, had vanished into thin air. And the only thing I knew for sure was that I would tear this city apart, brick by bloody brick, to get him back. My story with him, our story, didn't begin with a kidnapping. It began with me playing a part. For years, I was the loyal shadow at the side of the city's most formidable mob boss, a man a full 8 years my senior. I perfected the role of the devoted subordinate, the kid he Eurostrade saved, always ready with a smile, always craving his attention. I clung to him, manufacturing excuses for his touch, demanding reassurances and whispered praises. Then he appeared, a singer, with a voice as soft as velvet and a gentle demeanor that I could never replicate. Night after night, he would croon for Roman, his melodies weaving a spell that I was forced to witness from the driver's seat. I was their chauffeur, a silent observer to their growing intimacy, watching their reflections in the rearview mirror. Who could possibly endure that kind of torture? The resentment simmered, then boiled over, until one night, in a blaze of fury and desperation, I broke every rule. I slept with the boss. The next morning, under the inferno of his gaze, I offered nothing but a defiant, easy lie, setting in motion a chain of events that would either bind us together forever or shatter us completely. The first rays of dawn sliced through the penthouse blinds, casting golden bars across Roman Eurostrade's bare chest. He was dead to the world, sprawled across the vast bed in a state of deep slumber, one powerful arm thrown over me, pinning me to the mattress like an anchor. I tried to shift, to escape the weight of his limb and the consequences of the night, but his muscles, corded and strong, were an unyielding cage. My eyes drifted down, cataloging the vivid purple bite marks that I had painted across his skin. I traced the constellation of hickeys blooming over his collarbone, a damning roadmap of my reckless decisions. I was the artist of this chaos, the sole culprit. And a dark, shameful part of me savored the phantom sensation of his skin yielding beneath my teeth. Last night was a maelstrom of expensive whiskey and corrosive jealousy. My assigned task had been simple: pick up Elliot, the beautiful singer who had so thoroughly captured Roman's fascination, from a chic downtown lounge. It was a routine I had come to despise. Night after night, I Eurostrade play the role of the dutiful driver, my eyes locked on the rearview mirror, watching Elioter Eurostrade's gentle smiles as Roman leaned in, his whispered words coaxing laughter from the singer Eurostrade's lips. To them, I was just the driver, the muscle, the stray kid Roman had scooped off the streets a decade ago. It didn't matter how lavishly he spoiled me, how much he invested in me. At the end of the day, I was just his employee. And that singer, he was effortlessly infiltrating a world, a life, a place beside Roman that I had fought tooth and nail to secure for myself. So I sat outside the lounge parked at the curb, the driver Eurostrade's seat my solitary throne. I was nursing a bottle of bourbon, the amber liquid doing little to quell the fire in my gut as some saccharine love song crooned from the radio. My eyes burned, not from the alcohol, but from the searing image of Eliota Eurostrade's voice becoming the soundtrack to Romarna Eurostrade's nights. Then, I saw my opening. Elliot excused himself, disappearing into the lounger Eurostrade's restroom. Maybe it was the liquor courage. Maybe it was the years of pent-up resentment finally erupting. Whatever the cause, I found myself following him. A single, precise jab to a pressure point in his neck, and he crumpled to the cold, tiled floor, out cold. I didn't Eurostrade hesitate. I didn't Eurostrade feel a shred of remorse. I simply left him there and stormed out, my sights set on Romarna Eurostrade's penthouse. The heavy door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing my own internal tempest. Roman was where I knew he Eurostrade be, lounging on his sprawling black leather couch, his tie loosened, a glass of fine scotch swirling in his hand. He arched a single, perfectly sculpted eyebrow, the picture of condescending amusement. He expected me to whine, to complain about some trivial slight, as I so often did. "What's got your feathers so ruffled, Connor?" he drawled, his voice a low, teasing rumble that usually sent shivers down my spine. Tonight, it only fueled my rage. I didn't offer a word in response. I stalked across the room, my purpose singular and absolute. I grabbed the collar of his expensive shirt, hauled him forward, and shoved him down onto the supple leather. His eyes widened, a flicker of genuine surprise finally cracking his mask of cool indifference. He tried to push me off, to reassert his dominance, but he underestimated the strength our Eurostrade built. He had paid for years of boxing lessons, inadvertently forging the very muscle I now used against him. "Kid, get the hell off me," he growled, his voice laced with a dangerous edge. But I wasn't listening. I wasn't his kid anymore. I pinned his wrists above his head and my lips crashed down on his. He froze for a nanosecond, stunned into stillness. Then, he fought back. It was a flurry of sharp curses and thrashing limbs. "You little Euros your way out of line," he snapped, his words a desperate attempt to regain control. But I felt the subtle shift, the crack in his voice when I kissed him with more force, more desperation. Somewhere between his furious protests and my relentless persistence, the nature of our struggle transformed. The fight bled into something else entirely, something raw and primal. His hands, once pushing me away, were now fisted in my shirt, holding on. His breath, once steady and controlled, became hitched and ragged. By the time he was gasping my name against my lips, I was too far gone, too consumed by the moment to even consider the consequences. And that brought us to now. Roman, still lost in sleep. The harsh morning light seemed to soften his sharp, aristocratic features. His dark hair was a chaotic mess, his lips were slightly parted, and for the first time in 10 years, he looked almost Euros human. Not the untouchable, godlike kingpin of the citier Eurostrade's underworld, but just a man. I couldn't resist. I leaned down, my movements slow and deliberate, and stole another kiss. It was quick, soft, a gentle theft in the quiet of the morning. A colossal mistake. His eyes snapped open. Before I could recoil, his forehead slammed into mine with a sickening crack. I cried out, a pathetic yelp, as I tumbled backward off the bed, my body hitting the polished hardwood floor with a heavy thud. A sharp, radiating pain shot through my skull, but I managed to force a weak, crooked grin onto my face. "Morning, boss. Sleep well." Roman sat up, his bare chest heaving, his slate-gray eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "You're still here," he said, his voice pure ice, slicing through the lingering haze of last night's passion. "What the hell do you think you're playing at, Connor?" I rubbed my throbbing forehead, sprawling on the floor like a chastised puppy, trying to project an air of nonchalance I was far from feeling. "Just thought I'd stick around for the encore. You seemed to be enjoying yourself quite a bit." I threw in a wink for good measure, a desperate attempt to diffuse the explosive tension, but his expression only grew darker, stormier. "Get up," he snapped, swinging his powerful legs over the side of the bed. He was clad in nothing but a pair of black boxers, and my traitorous eyes couldn't help but notice the angry red scratches Eurostrade left trailing down his back. He caught me looking and snatched a shirt from the floor, yanking it on with unnecessary force. "You've got some nerve, kid." I climbed slowly to my feet, brushing the dust from my jeans. "Come on, Roman. Don't act like you hated it. I felt you. I know you did." His hand cracked across my face before I could even register the movement. The slap was sharp, explosive, making my ears ring with a high-pitched whine. My cheek burned with a fiery heat, and I tasted the metallic tang of blood where my teeth had bitten into my tongue. For a split second, I was just stunned. Roman had never laid a hand on me before. Not once in 10 years. Not when Eurostrade mouthed off. Not when Eurostrade botched a job. Never. A painful tightness seized my chest, but I forced that same crooked, defiant smile back onto my lips. "Fair hit, boss. I probably deserved that." Roman's hand curled into a fist at his side, his knuckles turning white. "You think this is a game?" he snarled, his voice a low, menacing growl. "I took you in, I trained you, I gave you everything you have, and you pull these euros." I took a step closer, deliberately ignoring the searing sting on my cheek. "I did it because I'm crazy about you, you idiot," I said, my voice shaking, betraying the bravado I was so desperately trying to project. "You think I'd risk everything we have for some cheap thrill?" The confession tumbled out of me, raw and unstoppable. "I've been in love with you since I was 16, Roman." His jaw clenched, a muscle pulsing in his cheek, but his eyes were unreadable, like storm clouds gathering before a lightning strike. "Love," he spat the word as if it were poison on his tongue. "You're a kid with a crush, Connor. You don't know the first thing you're talking about." My own temper, always simmering just below the surface, flared to life. "I'm not a kid anymore. I know exactly what I want, and it's you. It has always been you." He turned away, grabbing a pack of cigarettes from the nightstand. His movements were stiff, and I noticed he was favoring his side. Last night hadn't been gentle, and I wasn't the least bit sorry. He lit one, the small flame casting dancing shadows across his tormented face. "This never happened," he stated, exhaling a plume of gray smoke that veiled his expression. "Do you hear me? This never happened." My stomach twisted into a painful knot, but I held my chin high. "You can pretend all you want, boss, but it doesn't change the fact that you kissed me back." "Get out," he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "Now." I grabbed my jacket from the floor, slinging it over my shoulder with a defiant flick of my wrist. "Fine, but you know where to find me when you finally stop lying to yourself." I paused at the doorway, stealing one last glance back at him. He was staring at the floor, the cigarette burning down between his fingers, forgotten ash falling to the expensive rug. For a fleeting second, I thought he might call out, might say something, anything. But he remained silent. I walked out, the door clicking shut behind me with an air of finality. The hallway was dim, the penthouse unnervingly quiet, save for the distant hum of the awakening city. My cheek still throbbed, and my heart felt like it had been trampled and left for dead. But I kept walking. Roman could deny it until he was blue in the face. But last night wasn't just my fantasy. He wanted it too. I had felt it in his every touch, heard it in every curse he Eurostrade muttered into my skin. Now, I just had to figure out how to make him admit it before he succeeded in pushing me away for good. I found myself nursing a bitter coffee in a greasy spoon diner downtown, the kind of place where the jukebox exclusively played Sinatra, and the waitresses, who had seen it all, called everyone a circumflex Euros hon. A circumflex Eurostrade. The ache in my cheek from Roman's slap was a dull, persistent throb, but it was nothing compared to the deep, cavernous ache in my chest. I couldn't stop replaying the events of last night, his hands on my body, the intoxicating moment he finally gave in, only to brutally shut me out in the stark light of day. I was a fool for ever thinking one night could change a decade of carefully constructed boundaries. He was Roman, the man who held half the Citer Eurostrade's underworld in the palm of his hand. And I was just me, his driver, his muscle, his stray. My phone buzzed on the sticky tabletop, vibrating against a forgotten syrup ring. It was a text from Robert, Romarner Eurostrade's loyal right-hand man. Elliot's still at the lounge. Pick him up. Perfect. Just what I needed to cap off a spectacular morning chauffeuring the golden-voiced pretty boy who had Roman so thoroughly entranced. I downed the rest of my coffee, its bitterness a perfect match for my mood, and headed out into the gray morning. The lounge was a swanky, pretentious joint, all crushed velvet booths and strategically dim lighting. I found Elliot sprawled on a bench just outside the men's room, gingerly rubbing the back of his neck as if he'd slept on it wrong. A sharp pang of guilt struck me. Last night, in my bourbon-fueled haze, I had knocked him out cold. I hadn't meant to hurt him, not really. I just needed him out of the picture. His large, hazel eyes, so full of innocent confusion, blinked up at me. Connor, what happened? I feel like I got hit by a truck. I manufactured a casual shrug, playing the part of the concerned friend. Must have slipped in the bathroom. Those tiles are slick. I offered him a hand, pulling him to his feet. He swayed unsteadily, and I instinctively caught him by the elbow, my grip firm. Easy there, rockstar. You good to work? He nodded, a shy, grateful smile breaking through his groggy confusion. Thanks for coming to get me. You're always looking out. His voice was as soft as I remembered, melodic even when he was just speaking. I could suddenly understand Roman's fascination. Elliot possessed an effortless, unstudied charm, a combination of puppy-dog eyes and a gentle spirit. He was everything I wasn't. I guided him toward the car, his arm slung over my shoulder for support. You're too nice for this city, I muttered, only half joking. How do you survive these late-night gigs without getting eaten alive? He let out a light, tinkling laugh. I've got you, don't I? Like that time you scared off those creeps who were hassling me after my set. You're kind of my hero, Connor. His cheeks flushed a delicate pink, and he glanced away, fidgeting with the end of his scarf. I rolled my eyes, a reflexive gesture to hide the unexpected warmth that spread through my chest. Don't get sappy on me. Just doing my job. I opened the passenger door for him, but my mind was a million miles away. Roman had never ignored me before. Not like this morning. For 10 long years, I had been a constant at his side ever since he'd found me, a scrawny 12-year-old scrounging for scraps in a forgotten alley. He was the one who gave me the name Connor. Said it suited me better than the nothing I'd had before. Now he couldn't even bring himself to look at me. We were halfway to Elioter Eurostrade's apartment when he piped up again from the passenger seat. "Hey, that nighter Euros the other night you drove me and Roman back from the club. I sang a cover of My Funny Valentine just for him. Did you happen to catch it?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. "Missed it," I clipped out, my voice emerging sharper, colder than I intended. Was too busy trying to keep the car on the straight and narrow. Elliot flinched beside me. "Sorry," he mumbled, shrinking into the seat. "Didn't mean to pry. I just thought Euros, you know, Roman really likes my singing. Says it helps him sleep." I nearly swerved the car into oncoming traffic. "Sleep?" I echoed, my head whipping around to stare at him. "That's it. He just Euros listens to you sing." Elliot nodded, his expression one of pure confusion at my sudden intensity. "Yeah, he's got insomnia or something," says my voice calms him down. "Why, what did you think?" His eyes widened as the implication finally dawned on him. "Wait, you didn't think Euros, oh, Connor?" "No, it's not like that at all. I'm just the entertainment." A wave of overwhelming relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. But it was immediately chased by a fresh tide of scalding embarrassment. For months, I had been losing my mind, consumed by a jealous rage over a guy who was essentially Romana Eurostrade's human lullaby. "Good to know," I muttered, my gaze fixed firmly on the road ahead. My jealousy had been burning me alive from the inside out. And for absolutely nothing. We pulled up to Elliot's building, a modest walk-up in a quieter, tree-lined part of town. I helped him out of the car, still feeling like a complete jackass for what I'd done to him last night. As he fumbled with his keys, I heard the sound of purposeful footsteps on the pavement behind us. My blood ran cold. Roman was striding down the sidewalk, dressed in a razor-sharp black suit, his long coat billowing around him in the morning breeze. He looked like a goddamn movie star, all chiseled jaw and ice-cold eyes. My heart stuttered in my chest, but his gaze passed right over me as if I were nothing more than a piece of the scenery. "Morning, Elliot," Roman said, his voice as smooth and dark as aged whiskey. "You all right?" Elliot beamed, his face lighting up. "All good, thanks to Connor. He was my knight in shining armor today." Roman's gaze flickered to me for a fraction of a second, cold and dismissive, before turning away. "Get some rest," he told Elliot, already turning on his heel to leave. "I've got business to attend to." I stood there, frozen on the sidewalk, as he walked away without another word, without even a nod in my direction. It was like I was invisible. A painful lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it down, refusing to let the emotion show. "Come on, let's get you inside," I told Elliot, my voice rough as I practically dragged him up the stairs to his apartment. Once he was safely inside and settled, I lingered in the drab hallway, my mind a chaotic whirlwind. Roman had never been this distant, this cold. Even when Eurostrade royally screwed up jobs or mouthed off to him, Eurostrade always given me that small, exasperated half-smile, called me a circumflex Euros kid, a circumflex Eurostrade, and ruffled my hair. Now it was like I didn't exist. I leaned my head back against the peeling paint of the wall, running a hand through my hair in frustration. Maybe last night was a terrible mistake, but I couldn't undo it. And the truth was I didn't want to. Elliot poked his head out of his apartment door. "You okay, Connor? You look Euros sad." I forced a grin that felt like a grimace. Me, nar, I'm peaky. Just need a nap. I paused, my expression softening. Look, Elioto Romans into you. Stick with him. Keep him happy. Don't mess it up. Elliot blinked, his brow furrowed in confusion. Into me, Connor, I told you, it's just singing. He dose into euros, I mean, I'm not his type. He hesitated for a moment, then added quietly, I kind of thought you were. My heart did a frantic somersault in my chest, but I laughed it off, a harsh, brittle sound. You're dreaming, Songbird. Get some sleep. I headed back to the car, my head a complete mess. Elioto Trade's words echoed in the sudden silence. Were Trade his type? Could he possibly be right? Or was I just desperately clinging to a hopeless fantasy? I slid into the driver's seat, staring at the empty stretch of street where Roman had disappeared. For 10 years, he had been my anchor, the one constant in my life. He had given me a name, a purpose, a home. But now, for the first time, I had no idea where I stood with him. All I knew for sure was that I wasn't giving up. Not on him, not on us, even if he was too damn stubborn to see it. The rain began to fall, pelting the windshield as I cruised aimlessly through the city streets. The wipers sliced back and forth through the downpour, a hypnotic, rhythmic metronome marking time. My head was still spinning from Elioto Trade's unintentional bombshell. Roman wasn't sleeping with him. He was just using the singer Trade's voice as a high-class cure for insomnia. It should have felt like a victory, a monumental win. But Romana Trade's cold, dismissive shoulder that morning stung far worse than the slap he had delivered in his penthouse. I knew I had to find him, to talk this out, to force a confrontation, even if it meant he would shut me down all over again. For a decade, he had been my North Star, the fixed point in my chaotic universe, and I wasn't ready to lose my way now. I knew his habits like the back of my own hand. When Roman was angry, or stressed, or feeling the weight of his empire, he retreated to a specific hole-in-the-wall diner on the forgotten edge of town. It was the kind of place that served greasy, artery-clogging burgers and offered bottomless cups of burnt coffee. And sure enough, as I rounded the corner, I spotted his sleek black SUV parked outside. I pulled in beside it, my stomach churning with a nauseating mix of dread and determination. This could go south, and it could go south fast, but I wasn't backing down. Inside, the diner smelled of fried onions, stale cigarette smoke, and rain-soaked coats. Roman was tucked away in a corner booth, methodically stirring a cup of black coffee, his expression as unreadable as a stone carving. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Maggie with a smoker's gravelly rasp for a voice, slid a plate of golden brown fries in my direction. On the house, Connor. You look like you could use M. Thanks, Maggie, I said, flashing her a grin I didn't feel in the slightest. I slid into the booth across from Roman, placing the plate of fries squarely between us. You gonna eat those, boss, or are you just here to brood? He didn't even look up from his coffee cup. Not in the mood, Connor. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, as if he were speaking to a complete stranger. The casual dismissal cut deeper than I expected. I leaned back against the cracked vinyl of the booth, crossing my arms over my chest. You're always in a mood lately. What's the deal? I mess up one time, and you're ready to write me off completely. I kept my tone light, teasing, but my pulse was hammering against my ribs. He finally lifted his head and met my eyes, and it was like staring directly into the heart of a storm. You didn't just mess up, Connor. You crossed a line. A line you karna euros trade T uncross. You think you can just a euros. He stopped abruptly, his jaw tight, and took a long sip of his coffee as if it were a lifeline. Forget it. I snatched a fry from the plate, pointing it at him like a weapon. I can't forget it, Roman. And you know why? I lowered my voice, leaning in across the table, forcing him to meet my gaze. Because you felt it too. Don't you dare lie to me. His hand tightened around the thick ceramic mug, his knuckles whitening with the pressure. You're out of your depth, kid. This isn't some game you can charm your way out of. Before I could fire back with a retort, the sky outside opened up even further. The rain began hammering against the dina's large plate glass windows with a furious intensity. I saw Maggie cursing under her breath as she struggled to drag the heavy sidewalk sign inside, and in that moment, I saw my chance. Come on, boss. Let's get out of here before we have to swim. I grabbed my jacket, hoping against hope that he would follow my lead. He hesitated for a long moment, then tossed a few crumpled bills onto the table and strode out into the deluge. I jogged to my car, fumbling in the trunk for the large umbrella I kept there. By the time I caught up to him on the sidewalk, he was already soaked, his crisp white shirt clinging transparently to his broad shoulders. I hurried to his side, holding the umbrella over his head, tilting it to shield him from the worst of the downpour. You're gonna catch a cold, tough guy. Roman snatched the umbrella from my hand, his fingers brushing against mine for a fleeting, electric moment. I can handle it. His tone was sharp, but I saw Eater Euros a flicker of something softer, something vulnerable in his eyes before he looked away. I didn't push it. I just walked beside him, the rain drumming a steady, relentless rhythm on the taut fabric of the umbrella. We were halfway down the block when I decided to try again, keeping my voice deliberately casual. You remember that time I crashed your favorite car chasing down that dealer? You didn't kick me out then. Why is this any different? I nudged his arm gently, testing the waters. I'm still your guy, right? He stopped walking, the rain dripping from the ends of his dark hair. You're my guy, he said, but it wasn't a reassurance. It was and that's why I'm sending you abroad next week. Europe, maybe Asia. Somewhere far away. Somewhere you'll be safe. My heart stopped dead in my chest. What? I grabbed his wrist, the sudden movement causing the umbrella to tilt, letting the cold rain soak us both. You're shipping me off. After everything? It's not a punishment, he snapped, pulling his arm free from my grasp. This city is a war zone, Connor. You're too reckless. I can't hear Euros. He cut himself off, his hands shaking as he fumbled for a cigarette. I should have never dragged you into this life in the first place. The words hit me like a physical punch to the gut. 10 years ago, he'd found me half-starved and feral, dodging cops in a filthy alley. He had given me a name, a purpose, a home, and now he was saying it was all a mistake. I stepped closer, the rain blurring my vision, or maybe it was tears. You don't get to decide that for me, Roman. I'm not leaving you. He exhaled a long stream of smoke, his gaze fixed on the wet pavement. You don't have a choice. It's already done. His voice was final, absolute, as if he had already severed the ties that bound us. I grabbed the lapels of his expensive coat, yanking him toward me until we were chest to chest. You don't get to toss me aside just because you're scared of what happened between us last night. My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated myself for the weakness. I'm not some kid you can just send away when things get messy. He met my gaze then, and for a heart-stopping second, I thought he might actually give in. that the walls might come down. Then his expression hardened, turning to granite. "Go home, Connor. That's an order." I laughed, a bitter, broken sound that was loud even over the roar of the rain. "An order? You think I'm here because you pay me? I'm here because I love you, you stubborn, thick-headed bastard." I took a step back, letting the rain soak me through to the bone. "Fine, send me away, but you're going to miss me when I'm gone." He didn't respond. He just turned and headed for his SUV. I watched him go, my chest tight with a pain so profound it was hard to breathe, the useless umbrella hanging limply at my side. The driver, some new guy I didn't recognize, peeled out from the curb, leaving me standing alone in the downpour. I was soaked, shivering, but it was the cold, creeping fear that truly chilled me. For the first time in 10 years, I wondered if I had finally lost him for good. I started walking, with no destination in mind, just moving to keep from shattering into a million pieces. He could push me away all he wanted, but I wasn't done fighting. Not for him, not for us. The city's relentless pulse thrummed through the night, a familiar heartbeat that usually soothed me. But in that moment, my entire world had narrowed to the frantic vibration of the burner phone in my pocket. Robert Eurostrade's voice, tight with a panic I had never heard from him before, crackled through the receiver. "Connor Romarna Eurostrade's gone. His car Eurostrade's on some back road. Empty, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Euro's just gone." My stomach plummeted, the memory of our rain-soaked argument in the diner fading to insignificant static. Roman missing. The man who was supposed to be untouchable. The kingpin of the city. The one man nobody dared to cross. I was already sprinting toward my car before Robert finished his sentence, the city lights blurring into streaks of neon. "Send me the location," I barked into the phone, weaving recklessly through late-night traffic. "And keep it quiet. No cops, no lieutenants, nobody." Robert agreed, his voice shaky. He had seen Roman pull off impossible feats, but this felt different, darker. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing through a Rolodex of Roman's enemies. He had too many to count, but there was only one with the gall, the sheer insanity, to pull a stunt like this. Grayson, a sleazy rival who ran the North Side crew. He Eurostrade been gunning for Romarna Eurostrade's throne ever since a lucrative deal had gone south years ago. This reeked of him. The car was just as Robert described, abandoned on a desolate stretch of road near the old industrial district, its driver Eurostrade's side door hanging open like a silent scream. Robert was there, crouched by the fresh tire tracks, his face pale and drawn under the harsh glare of a lone streetlight. "No ransom, Paul, no nothing," he said, handing me a half-smoked cigarette he Eurostrade found on the ground. It was Grayson Eurostrade's brand, the cheap, acrid kind that always smelled faintly of regret. "You thinking what I'm thinking, Grayson?" I growled, crushing the cigarette butt under the heel of my boot. "He's got the balls and the motive. Where's he holed up these days?" Robert pointed me toward an old tannery, a rotting, skeletal husk of a building that was perfect for the kind of dirty work Grayson specialized in. I checked my gear, my movements fluid and practiced. A 9mm pistol snug in its shoulder holster, a razor-sharp switchblade tucked securely in my boot. "Stay here," I told Robert. "If you hear shots, come running." The tannery loomed against the night sky like a ghost, its broken windows like vacant, staring eyes. The air was thick with a cloying stench of chemical decay and damp rot. I counted at least a dozen of Grayson Eurostrade's goons patrolling the perimeter, their hulking silhouettes flickering under the harsh, buzzing floodlights. I slipped past them, melting into the shadows, my heart pounding a frantic drum against my ribs, but my hands were rock steady. Inside, the air was damp and cold, the concrete floor slick with years of grime. Then I heard them. Voices. Graysona Eurostrade's nasally, arrogant drawl, and underneath it, Romarna Eurostrade's low, controlled tone. A wave of sharp, fleeting relief washed over me. He was alive. I crept closer, peering through a rusted, half-open doorway. Roman was tied to a steel chair in the center of the vast, open room. His lip was split and bleeding, but his posture was defiant, his gaze unwavering. Grayson was pacing in front of him like a caged animal, a fat cigar clamped in one hand, a heavy revolver in the other. "You thought you could screw me over forever, huh, Roman?" Grayson sneered, tapping the barrel of the gun against Roman's jaw. "Took your best friend out of the picture back then, didn't you? Now I'm just returning the favor." Romarna Eurostrade's eyes flickered toward my hiding place for just a second, but it was enough. I saw the subtle, almost imperceptible movement of his fingers working at the ropes that bound his wrists. He was buying time. I gave a barely perceptible nod and readied my blade. Graysona Eurostrade's goons were distracted, laughing at some crude joke one of them had made. "You're all alone now, Roman," Grayson said, leaning in close, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "No brothers left, no lover Euros, just this kid." He jerked his head in my direction, and my blood turned to ice. "Pretty boy like him. Shame to waste him." Romarna Eurostrade's voice was as cold and hard as steel. "Do what you want with him." My chest tightened, the words slicing into me deeper than any knife could. He was bluffing. I knew he had to be bluffing, but damn, it still hurt like hell. Graysona Eurostrade's cruel grin widened and he raised his gun, pointing it in my direction. "Say goodbye, Connor." I was coiled, ready to move, to lunge. But then, a phone rang, its shrill, jarring tone cutting through the tense silence. Grayson cursed, stomping over to a nearby table to answer it. "What? I told you no calls." It was the only distraction we needed. In a flash, Roman was free, the loosened ropes falling to the floor, and I was already moving. I lunged from the shadows, my blade slashing across the wrist of the nearest goon. He screamed, his gun clattering to the concrete, and I kicked it across the floor to Roman. He caught it midair, a seamless, deadly motion, and fired 2 precise shots, dropping 2 more of Graysona Eurostrade's men before they could even react. I tackled another, my fist cracking against his jaw with a satisfying crunch. The room erupted into chaos. Shouts and gunfire echoed off the high, decaying ceilings. But Roman and I moved in perfect sync, a deadly dance we Eurostrade practiced 100 times in training but never for real. He was a blur of motion, every shot finding its mark, while I kept the remaining goons off him, my blade a flashing arc of silver in the dim light. Grayson dove behind a stack of wooden crates, screaming for his men to shoot me. I was on him in an instant, but a stray bullet tore through my side. A searing, white-hot fire erupted along my ribs. I staggered, blood soaking through my shirt, but I didn't stop. Suddenly, Roman was at my side, his gun pressed firmly to Graysona Eurostrade's temple. "Call them off," he snarled. Grayson, his face ashen, raised his hands, shouting for a ceasefire. The goons backed away, and Roman pulled me toward the exit. "Move, Connor," he commanded, his voice steady, but his eyes betrayed the panic he was feeling. I was lightheaded, the world tilting and spinning, but I forced my feet to move, one in front of the other. Outside, Robert was waiting with the car, the tires screeching as we piled in. I slumped against the leather seat, a warm pool of my own blood spreading beneath me. Roman Eurostrade's hands were on me, his fingers probing the wound, his face a pale mask of fear in the flickering streetlights. "Stay with me, kid," he said, his voice breaking for the very first time I could ever remember. I managed a weak, bloody grin. "Told you you'd miss me." My vision began to blur, Roman Eurostrade's face fading in and out of focus, but his grip on my hand never faltered. I didn't know if it was the blood loss or the overwhelming relief, but for a fleeting moment, I felt like we were okay. Like he was still mine, even if he would never say the words. The sharp, clinical scent of disinfectant stung my nostrils as I blinked my way back to consciousness. I was in a hospital bed, the room far too bright, the incessant beeping of the monitors drilling into my skull. My side throbbed with a deep, persistent ache where Grayson's bullet had grazed me. But I was alive, which was more than I had dared to hope for. Robert was slouched in a chair by the door, looking as though he hadn't slept in a week. His hair was a mess, his tie was loose, and his suit was rumpled. He caught my eye and bolted upright. "Jesus, Connor, you scared the hell out of me. You were out cold for 2 weeks, man. 2 whole weeks." My voice came out as a dry, gravelly rasp, my throat feeling like sandpaper. I tried to sit up, but a sharp lance of pain shot through my side, pinning me back against the pillows. "Where's Roman?" Robert grimaced, rubbing the back of his neck. "He's been here every single night, barely sleeping. The guy's a wreck, but he won't admit it, of course. Said he's coming by soon." He paused, eyeing me with a mixture of relief and exasperation. "You're lucky, you know. The bullet missed anything vital. Doc says you'll be fine. Just €2, don't do that again." I managed a weak chuckle, no promises. My mind was stuck on a single phrase here every night. That didn't sound like the same man who had ordered me to get lost, who had told me our night together never happened. Before I could ask more, the door swung open, and there he was. Roman was dressed in a soft, gray sweater and tailored slacks, looking as polished and put together as ever, but the illusion was shattered by the dark, bruised shadows carved under his bloodshot eyes. He was carrying a thermos, the kind of mundane object you'd expect from a man desperately pretending he had everything under control. "Eat," he said, setting it on the rolling tray table beside my bed. His voice was gruff, almost angry, as if he were mad at me for having the audacity to almost die. He unscrewed the thermos, and the rich, savory scent of chicken soup filled the sterile room. The smell made my stomach growl, but I was more focused on him. "You look like crap, boss," I said, my voice still rough, trying to inject some levity into the tense atmosphere. "When's the last time you slept?" He ignored my question, carefully spooning the hot soup into a bowl. "You need to eat. Doctor's orders." He held out a spoonful toward me, as if I were a small child who couldn't feed himself. I raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on my lips. "Come on, Roman. I'm not that helpless. Unless you just want an excuse to play nurse." I winked, but my heart was racing. He was here. He was taking care of me. After everything, it was almost too much to process. He snorted, a sound that was half amusement, half exasperation, and shoved the spoon closer to my mouth. "Shut up and eat, or I'll pour it down your throat." I saw the ghost of a smile in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. I took the spoon from his hand, our fingers brushing for a moment. I expected him to pull away, but he didn't. I sipped the soup, its warmth spreading through me, while he watched me with an unnerving intensity as if I might keel over at any second. "You didn't have to stay," I said quietly between spoonfuls. "I know you've got better things to do than babysit me." His jaw tightened and he looked away, his gaze fixed on the cityscape outside the window. "You think I'd just let you die on me? After all the trouble you cause?" His voice was low, almost soft, and it hit me with more force than his slap ever had. Before I could respond, the door opened again. A woman strode in, all sharp cheekbones, crimson lipstick, and heels that clicked on the linoleum like gunshots. She carried an aura of confidence that could cut glass, a vibe that screamed she owned any room she walked into. "Connor, right," she said, lighting a long, thin cigarette without asking for permission. "I'm Lair, Grayson's sister." I tensed immediately, my hand instinctively twitching toward the call button. Grayson's sister? What was she doing here? To finish the job her brother started? Romarna Eurostrade's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits, but Lair just laughed, a throaty, smoky sound as she exhaled a perfect ring of smoke. "Relax, tough guys. I'm not my brother." She settled gracefully into the chair Robert had vacated, crossing her long legs. "I'm here to apologize for Euro's little show. Grayson's always been a loose cannon, but targeting Romarna Euros, that was personal. Some old grudge from when Roman took out his buddy years back." Roman's expression didn't change, but I saw his shoulders stiffen almost imperceptibly. "Your brother's a problem, Lair. A problem I am not done with." She shrugged, completely unfazed. "Fair enough. But for now, let's call it even. You put a bullet in Grayson's leg, so I'd say we're square." She looked directly at me, a smirk playing on her red lips. "Nice shot, by the way. You've got balls." I grinned despite myself. "Thanks. Runs in the family." She laughed again, and I decided in that moment that I liked her, even if she was related to that snake Grayson. Lair leaned forward, her sharp, intelligent eyes flicking between me and Roman. "You know, Connor, I can see what's going on here. You're not just his driver, are you?" Her tone was teasing, but her words cut uncomfortably close to the bone. "You've got it bad for the big boss." A bold move, trying to climb that particular ladder. My face flushed hot, and I nearly choked on my soup. "Lady, you don't know what you're talking about," I muttered, but my protest was weak. She wasn't wrong. Roman was staring at the floor, his stony silence a more damning confession than any denial. Lair stood, gracefully stubbing out her cigarette in a plastic cup. She tossed a small, elegantly wrapped box onto my lap. "Brought you something. Call it a peace offering." I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a sleek, silver watch, so expensive it made my eyes bug out. "It's for Roman," she said, giving me a conspiratorial wink. "Figured you'd want to keep him happy." I clutched the box, a lump forming in my throat. "Thanks," I managed to croak out, glancing at Roman. He was still avoiding my eyes, but one of his hands was resting on the edge of my bed, close enough for me to touch. I wanted to give him the watch right then and there, to tell him everything, but Lair's knowing presence held me back. She headed for the door, pausing to look back at us one last time. "You two need to sort your shit out. Life's too short for these games." And with that, she was gone, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and palpable tension. Roman finally spoke, his voice quiet in the suddenly silent room. "You don't need to impress me with gifts, Connor. There was a strange edge to his voice, as if he were scared of what the watch and the gesture truly meant. I set the box on the bedside table, my fingers lingering on the smooth, cool metal. "It's not about impressing you," I said, my voice gaining strength. "It's about showing you that I'm not going anywhere." I met his gaze, holding it, daring him to push me away again. "Even if you keep trying to run." He didn't answer. He just stood up and grabbed his coat from the back of the chair. "Get some rest," he said, his back to me as he headed for the door. "We'll talk later, Roman," I called after him, my voice cracking slightly. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. "I'm not giving up on you. Not now. Not ever." He didn't turn around, but I saw his shoulders slump just a fraction. "I know," he said, so quietly that I almost missed it. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I leaned back against the pillows, the silver watch glinting under the harsh hospital lights. Lair was right. Life was too damn short, and I was done playing it safe. The hiss of steam from the train's massive engine filled the air, a mournful sigh against the chaotic backdrop of the platform. It was a blur of hurried goodbyes, tear-streaked faces, and the acrid smell of cigarette smoke. I stood by the open door of a carriage, my duffel bag slung over my one good shoulder, the weight of Romana Eurostrade's final words pressing down on me heavier than any luggage. He was in the car, parked just a few yards away, the engine idling, his rigid silhouette barely visible behind the tinted windows. I had told him I would leave, but not like this. Not on his terms. It had all come to a head an hour ago, on the drive to the shipping port. Romana Eurostrade's master plan was to send me off to Europe, to tuck me away in some safe house where I'd be out of the city's dangerous crosshairs. I wasn't having any of it. "You don't get to exile me," I had snapped, my voice sharp enough to make Robert, who was driving, flinch in the front seat. Roman hadn't budged, his gaze fixed on the passing skyline. "It's for your own good, Connor," he'd said, his tone infuriatingly paternal, as if I were still that same lost kid he Eurostrade pulled off the streets. That's when I lost it. I yanked my 9mm from its holster, pressing the cold, hard steel of the barrel to my own bicep. "You send me away, and I'm no use to anyone," I said, my voice dangerously calm, my finger twitching on the trigger. "I'll pull it, Roman. You know I will." His face went white, a stark contrast to his dark suit, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw genuine fear in those cold, gray eyes. Robert nearly crashed the car, yelling at me to stop, but my gaze never wavered from Roman's. Finally, he caved, his voice low and utterly defeated. "Fine. The train station." Now, I had won, but it felt like the hollowest of victories. The platform was crowded, people shoving past with oversized suitcases and tearful farewells. I spotted Lair leaning against a pillar near my train, her bright red coat a vibrant splash of color against the grimy, gray station. She was my ticket out, not just from Roman, but from this whole damn city. She was part of some clandestine underground network, fighting bigger, more important battles than turf wars and street deals. I was joining her, not because I wanted to be a hero, but because staying here meant inevitably dragging Roman down with me. "You sure about this?" Lair asked, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. "Last chance to jump ship." She was casually eating a pretzel, as if we weren't about to disappear into a war zone. I forced a grin that felt tight and unnatural across my face. "No turning back now. Besides, you need someone to watch your back." I glanced toward Roman's car again. a desperate, childish hope blooming in my chest that he would get out, that he would say something, anything. He didn't move. Lair followed my gaze, a knowing smirk on her lips. "You're hopeless, you know that. Risking it all for a guy who can't even say the words back." "He will," I said, trying to convince myself as much as her. I walked over to the car, my boots scuffing against the concrete platform. I rapped my knuckles on the tinted window. It rolled down with a soft whir, revealing Roman's face. His sharp jaw was clenched, his eyes were tired, and his mouth was set in a frown that could cut glass. "What do you want, Connor?" His voice was low, strained, like he was holding back a storm. I leaned in, close enough to smell his cologne, the familiar scent of cedar and smoke that had haunted my dreams for years. "You know what I want," I said, my voice miraculously steady despite the crushing ache in my throat. "I love you, Roman. I always have. Are you going to say it back, or are you going to keep pretending you don't feel it, too?" His eyes locked with mine, and for a long, agonizing moment, I thought he was going to shut me out again, to retreat behind his iron walls. Then he sighed, a heavy, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of a decade of restraint. "You're a pain in my ass, kid," he muttered, but his lips twitched, the barest hint of a smile. "Yeah, I love you. Happy now?" My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. Before I could second-guess myself, I grabbed the collar of his shirt and kissed him, hard and fast, right there through the open window. He stiffened for a second in surprise, then he melted into it, his hand coming up to grip my wrist, holding on as if he were afraid I might vanish into thin air. I slipped the silver watcher Lair trade S gifter into the pocket of his coat, then pulled back, a real, triumphant grin finally spreading across my face. "Something to remember me by. Don't lose it." He touched the pocket, his expression unreadable. "Get on the train, Connor," he said, but there was no venom in his voice, only a quiet, desperate plea. I nodded, stepping back from the car. "I'll be back, boss. Wait for me." The final whistle blew, a shrill, piercing sound, and I turned, boarding the train just as the doors began to hiss shut. Through the thick glass of the window, I watched Roman's car pull away from the curb and disappear into the city traffic. And my chest ached with a pain so profound it felt like it was caving in. 5 years later, the city was a different beast entirely. The wars had chewed it up and spit it out, leaving deep, jagged scars on the streets and on its people. I was back, older, harder, my left sleeve pinned neatly where my arm used to be. Lair was gone, lost in a mission that had gone to hell. Her sacrifice was a memory burned permanently into my soul. Trade deeping sweeping flaws at a dilapidated old theater, keeping an eye on Elliot, who was half mad now, spending his days singing to the ghosts in the dusty, empty seats. I was scrubbing the grime from the stage one evening when I felt a pair of eyes on me. I turned, my heart stopping in my chest. Roman was leaning against the grand door frame, his expensive coat dusted with the grime of the city. He was older, too, the lines around his eyes etched deeper, but he was still unfairly, achingly handsome, and the silver watch glinted on his wrist, scratched and worn, but clearly cared for. "You look like hell, Connor," he said, his voice the same warm, deep rumble I remembered, the jab softened by the look in his eyes. I laughed, the sound echoing in the cavernous, empty theater as I dropped the broom. "Missed you too, boss." I crossed the room, my empty sleeve swinging at my side, and he met me halfway. His arms wrapped around me, strong and sure and real, and for the first time in 5 long years, I felt whole. Thought you'd forgotten about me, I murmured into the familiar fabric of his shoulder, my voice thick with unshed tears. He pulled back, his hand coming up to cup my face, his calloused thumb brushing gently against my cheek. Never, and in his eyes, I saw it all. The love he couldn't bring himself to say all those years ago, now shining clear as day. We've got time now, kid, he said softly. Let's make it count. The old theater was quiet, the city humming its familiar song outside. I held him tighter, the painful years of the past finally fading away like a bad dream at dawn. So, what do you think? After all the bullets, the blood, and the years of heartbreak, do you believe a love born from such a chaotic beginning can truly last? It was a long and brutal road to get here, and the future is anything but certain. If you were captivated by Connor and Romana Eurostrade's story, and if you're rooting for them to finally find their peace, don't Eurostrade forget to hit that like button. And for more stories that will grab your heart and refuse to let go, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.